There are moments in life when a single question can live inside you for years. Like a small ember that never goes out, it flickers quietly in the background of your thoughts, glowing with a heat that you cannot ignore. Sometimes you try to push it away, sometimes you bury it beneath your daily responsibilities, but then a certain moment arrives, a memory surfaces, or a sound in the night awakens you, and that same ember bursts into flame again. For me, that question was not about fame or success or even about my future. It was about something far simpler and yet far more profound. Do the animals we love have a place in the eternal kingdom of God? I can still remember the very first time this question broke my heart open. I was 8 years old, sitting alone in my bedroom, while my parents whispered in hushed voices downstairs. Our family dog, a gentle collie named Samuel, had grown weak and frail. He was my companion from the time I could barely walk, the one who waited for me after school, who licked my tears when I cried, who guarded me like a small knight made of fur. That night I knew what was happening. I knew that Samuel's time on earth was ending, and in my child's heart fear wrapped itself around me like a cold blanket. I asked my mother the question that haunted me: will I ever see Samuel again in heaven? She tried to comfort me. She told me what many well-meaning Christian parents have told their children for generations. She said that heaven was for people, that animals did not have souls like we do, that Samuel was gone forever, and I needed to be strong. But even at 8 years old, something inside me rebelled against that answer. It felt wrong. It felt incomplete. I had been taught that God is love, that his compassion is without limit, that he cares for every sparrow that falls from the sky. How could that same God look at Samuel's wagging tail, his loyal eyes, his pure heart, and say that none of it mattered beyond this world? That question never left me. It lived beneath my laughter as I grew older, beneath my studies, beneath my acting career. Every time I formed a bond with another animal, the fear returned like a shadow at the edge of my joy. What if this love was only temporary? What if these creatures I cherished so deeply were less valuable to God than I was? Years later, when I was given the role of portraying Jesus in The Chosen, that question pressed itself upon me with even greater weight. How could I represent the God of infinite love while secretly wondering if his love stopped at the boundary of humanity? What kind of God would create the majesty of animals, their beauty, their loyalty, their joy, only to let them vanish into nothingness? This contradiction unsettled me in a way I could not ignore. During filming, we often worked with animals: sheep wandering across a hillside, donkeys carrying their burdens, even local dogs running freely in the background of certain scenes. I found myself watching them closely, the way they moved, the innocence in their eyes, the trust they placed in the people around them. It stirred something deep in me. It reminded me of Samuel. It reminded me of every pet I had ever loved, and it forced me again to face the question: where do these creatures belong in the eternal story of God? I began to search for answers. I turned to scripture with a desperation I had not felt in years. I looked at the Hebrew word nephesh, a word often translated as soul. I saw how it was used not only for humans but also for animals in Genesis. I read the words of Ecclesiastes asking who knows if the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth. The uncertainty leapt off the page. It was not a closed door, but an open mystery. Still, my study gave me knowledge but not peace. I could argue theology, but my heart still ached. The child inside me was still waiting for an answer that could quiet the tears of that night when Samuel left us. 3 months ago, everything changed. I adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever with kind eyes and a gentle spirit. I named him Shepherd. From the first day, he followed me like he had known me forever. When I sat down, he rested at my feet. When I walked, he walked beside me. When I looked into his eyes, I saw something that startled me. I saw unconditional love, the kind of love that reflects the gaze of God himself. No judgment, no demand, only delight. It made me wonder again. If God placed such love in the heart of this creature, how could it ever be wasted? As Shepherd became part of my life, the ember inside me flared into fire once more. The question refused to be silent. I found myself praying about it in quiet moments, sometimes during filming, sometimes in the stillness of night, sometimes sitting on my porch with Shepherd at my side. I asked God again and again, Lord, what is your heart for these animals you made? Are they only temporary companions? Are they destined to fade into nothing? Or do they have a place in your eternal kingdom? One evening, while we were finishing the last days of filming for a new season, I sat in silence between takes, my eyes closed, my heart restless. I whispered the question with more urgency than ever before. Jesus, please show me. I cannot carry this question any longer. I need to know. The words left my lips like a plea from the deepest part of me. That night, something happened that I cannot fully explain in human terms. I woke around 3 in the morning with an overwhelming sense that I needed to go outside. The night was clear, the stars burning like small lamps in a cathedral of creation. I wrapped myself in a blanket and stepped into the quiet of my backyard. Crickets sang softly, an owl called in the distance, and the air felt charged with holy expectation. I sat beneath the heavens and began to pray. There are moments when prayer feels like words, and there are moments when prayer feels like surrender. This was the second kind. I emptied my heart before God. Every memory of Samuel, every fear, every longing poured out of me. I asked the question again with tears on my face. Jesus, what happens to these animals that we love so much? Are they forgotten? Or do you hold them in your eternal embrace? As I prayed, peace began to wash over me. It was not the peace of silence or the peace of distraction. It was a peace that carried weight, a peace that seemed to breathe with life. And then, in that mysterious place between waking and dreaming, between earth and eternity, I saw him. I saw Jesus, walking toward me across a meadow unlike any I had ever known. The grass shimmered with colors beyond description. The air pulsed with harmony, as if every leaf and every blade was singing a hymn. And beside him, running with joy, were animals of every kind, dogs leaping with happiness, horses galloping with starlight in their manes, birds of paradise soaring in the sky, creatures I recognized and creatures I did not even have names for, all of them moving together in perfect unity, radiating peace and joy. And then, among them, I saw him, a collie running faster than the rest, eyes shining, tail wagging with recognition. My heart knew before my mind could grasp it. Samuel, my childhood companion, the one I had cried for as a boy, the one I had thought was lost forever. He leapt into my arms with a love that erased decades of grief in a single instant. Tears streamed down my face as I felt his presence, more real than any embrace I had known on earth. Jesus smiled at me with eyes full of compassion and said, "Did you really think my love was limited? Did you believe that I would create such capacity for love only to let it vanish?" Those words shattered the lie I had carried for so long. They revealed a truth greater than anything I had dared to hope. Every creature is a reflection of his love. Every bond of love is eternal because it flows from him. Nothing that bears his love is ever wasted. Nothing that carries his joy is ever lost. That was only the beginning of what he showed me. What followed changed my understanding of his kingdom, his love, and his plan for every living thing he has ever made. The meadow stretched farther than my eyes could see. It was not bound by fences, not limited by distance, not marked by shadows. Everything glowed with a light that did not come from the sun, but from the very presence of the one who walked toward me. Jesus moved with a peace that made the ground beneath his feet seem alive. Wherever he stepped, the grass seemed to bow in reverence, as if creation itself was welcoming its maker. Samuel pressed against me with joy so pure that my tears would not stop. The years of separation were gone in an instant. The grief of an 8-year-old boy melted into joy that could not be contained. I looked at Jesus, my heart still trembling with wonder. Lord, is this real? Are these creatures truly with you in eternity? Or is this just a dream meant to comfort me? Jesus placed his hand gently on Samuel's head, and the collie's eyes shone like living light. He looked at me with tenderness and said, "Every creature I have made carries a spark of my love. They are not accidents. They are not temporary amusements. They are beloved. They are mine." As he spoke, the meadow seemed to echo his words. Birds lifted their voices in song. Horses neighed in joy. Even the wind carried the sound of harmony, as if the entire place was an orchestra of worship. I stood in awe, overwhelmed by the beauty around me, yet part of me still struggled. I whispered, "But Lord, I was taught that only humans have souls. I was told that only we are made in your image." Jesus laughed, and the sound was like chimes of joy carried across eternity. You are made in my image in ways animals are not. But that does not mean they are without spirit. They are expressions of my delight. They are vessels of my joy. When I formed them, I breathed my delight into them, and that delight does not end with death. It is eternal. I watched as lions lay beside lambs without fear. Cats and dogs played together as friends. Predators and prey, once divided by the brokenness of earth, now lived in harmony. It was as if the original design of creation had been restored, the vision of Eden brought to completion. Jesus gestured to the scene around us. Look, Jonathan, this is what I intended from the beginning. No death, no fear, no cruelty, only love, joy, and peace. Samuel nuzzled closer to me, and I realized something profound. He remembered me. He loved me still. The bond we shared on earth had not been broken. It had been transformed. What had seemed like an end was in truth only the beginning of something eternal. Tears filled my eyes again, but this time they were not born of grief. They were born of joy so deep it felt like my soul itself was expanding. Jesus began to walk through the meadow, and I followed with Samuel at my side. Animals of every kind gathered around him, not with fear but with devotion. They approached him as beloved children run to a father who delights in them. He began to speak, and his words carried the weight of eternity. Let me show you 7 truths about my eternal kingdom, truths that will transform how you see every creature I have made. The first truth came as a group of horses galloped past us, their manes glowing with starlight. Animals are not accidents. They are deliberate works of my infinite creativity. I do not make anything without purpose. I do not create and then discard. Everything I make carries eternal value. I watched as a golden eagle descended from the sky and landed on his outstretched arm. He stroked its feathers with tenderness, and the eagle looked at him with devotion that needed no words. The second truth, he said, is this. The capacity for love that you see in animals is not their own invention. It comes from me. When you see loyalty in a dog, when you see comfort from a cat, when you see joy in a horse, you are seeing my own nature reflected through them. Their love is my love flowing in a different form. As he released the eagle and it soared into the sky, I felt my heart swell. Every act of kindness from an animal, every moment of companionship, every wag of a tail was not just instinct. It was a sermon. It was God's love wearing the face of creation. The third truth came as we walked toward a stream so clear it reflected heaven itself. Animals worship me in their own way simply by being what I created them to be. Every song of a bird is a hymn. Every purr of a cat is a prayer. Every act of unconditional love from a dog is a sermon about my character. They worship me naturally, without the complications of pride or doubt. As I looked at the stream, I saw animals drinking side by side without fear. Deer beside wolves, rabbits beside foxes, all at peace. Jesus continued. The fourth truth is this. The bonds between humans and animals are not random. They are part of my design. These bonds carry eternal significance. When you love an animal, and that animal loves you, it is not a fleeting attachment. It is part of the eternal story I am writing with creation. I turned and saw reunions happening across the meadow. Humans embraced animals they had loved on earth, and their joy was radiant. Tears of gladness fell freely, and every reunion looked like a festival of love. I felt Samuel's presence beside me and realized that what I was witnessing was the redemption of grief itself. What had seemed like loss was now revealed as love preserved forever. The fifth truth Jesus spoke with great tenderness. Every animal that has ever brought comfort to a hurting soul, every pet that has sat beside a lonely heart, every creature that has shown mercy or given companionship, I see them. Their service is precious to me. Their love is rewarded in my kingdom. I looked and saw what appeared to be a ceremony. Animals who had served humanity with devotion were being honored. Service dogs, therapy animals, even pets who had simply offered love in times of pain, all were celebrated. Their eyes shone with joy as Jesus touched each one. The sixth truth came as a group of puppies ran to us, tumbling with laughter in their movements. Their joy filled the air. Jesus knelt and lifted one into his arms as it licked his face. The joy of animals, he said, is a taste of the joy of my kingdom. Their play, their laughter, their innocence are lessons for humanity. They live without fear of tomorrow, without regret of yesterday. They love freely, they forgive quickly, they find delight in the smallest gift. These are qualities I want my children to learn. As he placed the puppy down and it ran off to join the others, his face grew solemn yet radiant with truth. The seventh truth is this: the death of an animal is not the end of their story. I am the God of resurrection. What I love, I preserve. What I create with purpose, I do not waste. Every creature that completes its journey on earth is welcomed into my eternal kingdom. He called out across the meadow, and to my amazement, creatures from every age of earth's history appeared. Dinosaurs walked beside deer. Ancient sea creatures swam through the air as if it were water. Extinct birds soared overhead with colors too bright for earthly eyes. Jesus looked at me and said, "Extinction on earth is not extinction in eternity. Nothing that bears my love is ever lost." My knees grew weak as I watched this miracle unfold. I saw the truth written across eternity. Every sparrow, every lamb, every creature great and small had a place in his heart. And if they had a place in his heart, they had a place in his kingdom. I turned to him with trembling lips. Lord, why have we not been taught this? Why do so many children grow up believing that their pets are gone forever? Why do so many hearts carry grief that could be healed with this truth? His expression grew heavy with compassion. Because my people have forgotten the fullness of my love. They have made my kingdom smaller than it is. They have believed lies that shrink my heart instead of reveal it. They forget that I am the God who redeems all things. Not some things, not only human things, all things. I felt the weight of his words pressing into my spirit. The grief of millions of people who had lost beloved animals, the sorrow of children who had been told their pets were gone, the pain of empty homes and silent yards. He wanted this truth to heal them. He wanted his love to reach where it had been denied. As I stood in that meadow with Samuel at my side and Jesus before me, I knew this was only the beginning. He had more to show me, more to reveal, more to heal. My heart burned with anticipation as I prepared to follow him deeper into this vision of eternal creation. The vision deepened as we walked farther into the meadow. I could feel that every step was not only moving me across this heavenly place, but was also carrying me deeper into understanding. Samuel walked beside me, his fur shining with a radiance that seemed woven with eternity. Shepherd, my golden retriever who had remained asleep in my backyard, seemed reflected in Samuel's joy, as though both dogs were bound to me in one unbroken thread of love. Jesus led me toward a garden, unlike any I had ever seen on earth. Trees towered high, their branches heavy with fruit that glowed like jewels. Flowers opened their petals to the light, releasing fragrances so pure they seemed to heal my soul as I breathed them in. Birds of every color sang together in a chorus that blended into a single hymn of praise. The entire place felt alive, not merely in the way nature feels alive on earth, but in a way that declared that this was life perfected. In the center of the garden, I saw animals gathered in reunions that filled my heart with wonder. Children ran to embrace pets they had lost. Elderly men and women wept with joy as horses, cats, and dogs rushed toward them with recognition shining in their eyes. The air was full of laughter, tears, and the unmistakable sound of love rediscovered. I turned to Jesus, my voice trembling. Lord, is this truly what happens when your children arrive in your kingdom? Do they find the ones they have lost? Do these bonds really endure forever? His eyes were full of compassion. Jonathan, every bond of love is eternal because love itself is eternal. Love does not die because I am the source of love, and I am eternal. The love between a human and an animal is not lesser than love between humans. It is different, but it carries the same spark of my heart. What comes from me cannot be destroyed. I watched as an elderly woman fell to her knees as a massive Great Dane leapt upon her, covering her face with joyful kisses. She laughed and wept at the same time, burying her face in his fur. Another child squealed with delight as a white horse reared in excitement before lowering its head gently, allowing her to embrace it. These reunions carried no hesitation, no doubt. They were immediate, full, and eternal. Jesus spoke again. On earth, death looks final. It appears as though love has been severed. But in my kingdom, you see the truth. Death is only a doorway. It cannot sever what is eternal. The love you thought was gone is revealed to be alive, waiting for you. As I listened, my eyes were drawn to a scene unfolding nearby. A man sat weeping as a small cat climbed into his lap, purring with contentment. He stroked its fur with shaking hands, whispering its name again and again. Jesus gestured toward them and said, "Do you see, this man believed for years that his beloved pet was lost to him. He carried grief that weighed upon his spirit, but now he sees the truth. The bond was never broken. It was preserved in me." The weight of those words sank deep into me. I thought of my own tears as a child when Samuel was taken from me. I thought of the nights when I whispered his name, longing for comfort that never came. Now here he was, alive, radiant, forever. The grief that had haunted me for decades dissolved into joy that words could not contain. We continued walking through the garden. I noticed that some animals bore marks of suffering from their time on earth. A dog that had been lame now ran with strength. A bird that had once been caged now flew with wings unbroken. A horse that had been overworked now danced freely with radiant energy. I looked at Jesus in awe. "Lord, even their pain has been healed," he nodded. "Every cruelty they endured, I redeem. Every moment of suffering is healed. Every wound is made whole. What was stolen from them on earth is restored to them here. Nothing is left broken in my kingdom." I felt tears rising again, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of hope, for I realized that every animal that had been mistreated, abandoned, or forgotten on earth was now healed in this place. Their eyes no longer carried fear or pain. They shone only with love, joy, and peace. Jesus continued speaking as we walked. "Jonathan, do you remember the words of Scripture that say, 'The whole creation groans, waiting for redemption'? Creation itself longs for restoration because it knows that my love will not stop until every part of it is made new. Humanity has often believed that my salvation is only for them, but I tell you that my redemption is for all creation." As he said this, I saw the earth itself rejoicing. Rivers sparkled as though singing. Trees swayed in a rhythm that felt like worship. Even the air seemed filled with life. It was as though the entire universe had been waiting for this moment, and now it had arrived. We came to a quiet clearing where a small turtle rested by a crystal pool. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized it instantly. When I was a teenager, I had rescued a small turtle from the side of the road and cared for it until it disappeared into the water one day. I never saw it again, but I had remembered it for years. Now here it was, radiant, alive, gazing at me with recognition that pierced my heart. I knelt beside it, overwhelmed. "Lord, even this small creature, even this one you kept." Jesus smiled. "Every act of love is remembered. Every creature that received your care is preserved. Nothing is forgotten. Nothing is wasted." I reached out and touched the turtle's shell, feeling its presence with a joy that was almost too much to bear. The reality of eternity was sinking deeper into me. This was not only about Samuel. It was about every creature I had ever loved, every bond I had ever formed. Each one had been preserved, healed, and restored. I turned to Jesus again, my voice breaking. "Lord, why have so many of us been denied this truth? Why do so many people carry the pain of believing their beloved animals are gone forever?" His eyes filled with sorrow. "Because humanity has forgotten the vastness of my heart. They believe lies that shrink my love. They imagine that my kingdom excludes, when in truth it includes. They tell children that their pets are gone forever, because they cannot imagine a love big enough to hold all of creation. But my love is not small. My love is infinite." The words struck me with the force of revelation. I realized that this message was not meant for me alone. It was meant for everyone who had ever carried the grief of losing an animal. It was meant for every child who had cried themselves to sleep, believing they would never see their beloved pet again. It was meant for every heart that longed for comfort but found none. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder and spoke with tenderness. "Jonathan, the time has come for this truth to be shared. You have carried the question since you were a boy. Now I have given you the answer. It is not only for you. It is for all who wonder, all who weep, all who hope." I bowed my head, overcome by the weight of his words. To be entrusted with such a message was beyond anything I could have imagined. Yet I knew it was true. I knew that what I had seen and heard was meant to heal hearts around the world. As I lifted my head, I saw Samuel watching me with eyes full of love. The turtle rested peacefully by the pool. The garden around me radiated joy. I knew that this was not the end of the vision. It was only the beginning. Jesus had more to show me, more to reveal, more to pour into my heart. And so, with trembling anticipation, I followed him deeper into the paradise of his eternal kingdom, ready to hear the truths that would change not only my life but the lives of countless others who were longing for hope. The vision deepened as we walked farther into the meadow. I could feel that every step was not only moving me across this heavenly place, but was also carrying me deeper into understanding. Samuel walked beside me, his fur shining with a radiance that seemed woven with eternity. Shepherd, my golden retriever who had remained asleep in my backyard, seemed reflected in Samuel's joy, as though both dogs were bound to me in one unbroken thread of love. Jesus led me toward a garden unlike any I had ever seen on earth. Trees towered high, their branches heavy with fruit that glowed like jewels. Flowers opened their petals to the light, releasing fragrances so pure they seemed to heal my soul as I breathed them in. Birds of every color sang together in a chorus that blended into a single hymn of praise. The entire place felt alive, not merely in the way nature feels alive on earth, but in a way that declared that this was life perfected. In the center of the garden, I saw animals gathered in reunions that filled my heart with wonder. Children ran to embrace pets they had lost. Elderly men and women wept with joy as horses, cats, and dogs rushed toward them with recognition shining in their eyes. The air was full of laughter, tears, and the unmistakable sound of love rediscovered. I turned to Jesus, my voice trembling. Lord, is this truly what happens when your children arrive in your kingdom? Do they find the ones they have lost? Do these bonds really endure forever? His eyes were full of compassion. Jonathan, every bond of love is eternal because love itself is eternal. Love does not die because I am the source of love and I am eternal. The love between a human and an animal is not lesser than love between humans. It is different, but it carries the same spark of my heart. What comes from me cannot be destroyed. I watched as an elderly woman fell to her knees as a massive Great Dane leapt upon her, covering her face with joyful kisses. She laughed and wept at the same time, burying her face in his fur. Another child squealed with delight as a white horse reared in excitement before lowering its head gently, allowing her to embrace it. These reunions carried no hesitation, no doubt. They were immediate, full, and eternal. Jesus spoke again. On earth, death looks final. It appears as though love has been severed, but in my kingdom you see the truth. Death is only a doorway. It cannot sever what is eternal. The love you thought was gone is revealed to be alive, waiting for you. As I listened, my eyes were drawn to a scene unfolding nearby. A man sat weeping as a small cat climbed into his lap, purring with contentment. He stroked its fur with shaking hands, whispering its name again and again. Jesus gestured toward them and said, "Do you see this man believed for years that his beloved pet was lost to him? He carried grief that weighed upon his spirit, but now he sees the truth. The bond was never broken. It was preserved in me. The weight of those words sank deep into me. I thought of my own tears as a child when Samuel was taken from me. I thought of the nights when I whispered his name, longing for comfort that never came. Now here he was, alive, radiant, forever. The grief that had haunted me for decades dissolved into joy that words could not contain. We continued walking through the garden. I noticed that some animals bore marks of suffering from their time on earth. A dog that had been lame now ran with strength. A bird that had once been caged now flew with wings unbroken. A horse that had been overworked now danced freely with radiant energy. I looked at Jesus in awe. Lord, even their pain has been healed. He nodded. Every cruelty they endured, I redeem. Every moment of suffering is healed. Every wound is made whole. What was stolen from them on earth is restored to them here. Nothing is left broken in my kingdom. I felt tears rising again, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of hope, for I realized that every animal that had been mistreated, abandoned, or forgotten on earth was now healed in this place. Their eyes no longer carried fear or pain. They shone only with love, joy, and peace. Jesus continued speaking as we walked. Jonathan, do you remember the words of Scripture that say the whole creation groans, waiting for redemption? Creation itself longs for restoration because it knows that my love will not stop until every part of it is made new. Humanity has often believed that my salvation is only for them, but I tell you that my redemption is for all creation. As he said this, I saw the earth itself rejoicing. Rivers sparkled as though singing. Trees swayed in a rhythm that felt like worship. Even the air seemed filled with life. It was as though the entire universe had been waiting for this moment, and now it had arrived. We came to a quiet clearing where a small turtle rested by a crystal pool. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized it instantly. When I was a teenager, I had rescued a small turtle from the side of the road and cared for it until it disappeared into the water one day. I never saw it again, but I had remembered it for years. Now here it was, radiant, alive, gazing at me with recognition that pierced my heart. I knelt beside it, overwhelmed. Lord, even this small creature, even this one you kept. Jesus smiled. Every act of love is remembered. Every creature that received your care is preserved. Nothing is forgotten. Nothing is wasted. I reached out and touched the turtle's shell, feeling its presence with a joy that was almost too much to bear. The reality of eternity was sinking deeper into me. This was not only about Samuel. It was about every creature I had ever loved, every bond I had ever formed. Each one had been preserved, healed, and restored. I turned to Jesus again, my voice breaking. Lord, why have so many of us been denied this truth? Why do so many people carry the pain of believing their beloved animals are gone forever? His eyes filled with sorrow, because humanity has forgotten the vastness of my heart. They believe lies that shrink my love. They imagine that my kingdom excludes when in truth it includes. They tell children that their pets are gone forever because they cannot imagine a love big enough to hold all of creation. But my love is not small. My love is infinite. The word struck me with the force of revelation. I realized that this message was not meant for me alone. It was meant for everyone who had ever carried the grief of losing an animal. It was meant for every child who had cried themselves to sleep, believing they would never see their beloved pet again. It was meant for every heart that longed for comfort but found none. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder and spoke with tenderness. Jonathan, the time has come for this truth to be shared. You have carried the question since you were a boy. Now I have given you the answer. It is not only for you, it is for all who wonder, all who weep, all who hope. I bowed my head, overcome by the weight of his words. To be entrusted with such a message was beyond anything I could have imagined, yet I knew it was true. I knew that what I had seen and heard was meant to heal hearts around the world. As I lifted my head, I saw Samuel watching me with eyes full of love. The turtle rested peacefully by the pool. The garden around me radiated joy. I knew that this was not the end of the vision. It was only the beginning. Jesus had more to show me, more to reveal, more to pour into my heart. And so, with trembling anticipation, I followed him deeper into the paradise of his eternal kingdom, ready to hear the truths that would change not only my life, but the lives of countless others who were longing for hope. We walked beyond the garden into a valley that opened wide like a cathedral, carved by the hand of God himself. The sky above glowed with a light that was not harsh but gentle, as if every beam of radiance carried compassion. The air was filled with songs not only from birds but from the very earth itself, as though every grain of soil and every blade of grass was proclaiming praise. Jesus walked before me with a calmness that silenced my doubts. Samuel followed close beside me, his tail swaying with a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of joy. All around us, animals moved in freedom, each one radiant with the life of eternity. As we entered the valley, I saw something that took my breath away. In the distance, a gathering was forming. Animals of every kind approached Jesus with reverence, their eyes shining with love. They were not afraid. They were not hesitant. They moved as children drawn to a father who delights in them. Among them were service dogs who had once guided the blind, horses who had carried the weary, and even small pets who had comforted lonely hearts. All of them drew near as if they knew that this was their moment of honor. Jesus turned to me and spoke with a voice that resonated like music. Jonathan, every act of service that animals have given is precious to me. I see every sacrifice, every comfort, every silent gift of loyalty they have offered to humanity. In my kingdom, nothing is overlooked. Every act of love is rewarded. I watched as he extended his hands, and light radiated from him like a crown of compassion. The animals who had served faithfully on earth shone with glory as they stood before him. It was as though he was clothing them with honor that could never fade. Their eyes reflected gratitude and joy, but also a humility that revealed they had always been what he created them to be, vessels of love. Tears filled my eyes as I realized what I was witnessing. On earth, these creatures were often overlooked, their sacrifices unnoticed. But here in eternity, they were celebrated by the very one who had made them. Their lives were not forgotten, their love was not wasted. We continued walking, and I saw scenes that revealed even more of his heart. A lion lay peacefully beside a lamb, the ancient vision of Isaiah fulfilled before my eyes. A hawk flew overhead with a dove, both gliding in harmony, no longer divided by instinct. Even creatures that had been extinct on earth now lived in joy, their presence reminding me that nothing created by God is ever truly lost. Jesus looked at me with eyes that pierced through every layer of my soul. Jonathan, my redemption is not narrow. It does not stop with one species. It is for all creation. The earth itself groans for restoration, and I will not stop until every part of it is made new. I struggled to hold his gaze, for the weight of his love was too much for my human heart to carry. Yet I wanted to receive it all. I whispered, Lord, your love is so much greater than we have ever imagined. Why do so many people believe it ends with us? Why do so many limit what you have made infinite? He answered with sorrow and compassion, because they have forgotten who I am. They have made my kingdom smaller than it is. They have built walls where I built open fields. They have spoken limits where I have spoken abundance. But I am the God who leaves the 99 to find the one. I am the God who cares for the sparrow. I am the God whose mercy has no end. As his words sank into me, I realized that the message he was giving me was not only about animals. It was about the very nature of his love. His kingdom was wider, deeper, and fuller than we had dared to believe. We reached the edge of the valley, and there, Jesus stopped. He pointed toward a hill where a vast multitude of animals was gathered. They came from every nation, every age, every corner of creation. Their presence filled the horizon with living color. Among them, I saw animals who had been abandoned on earth, dogs who had once wandered streets alone, cats who had been left behind, horses who had been beaten and neglected. Each one now stood whole, radiant, restored. Their eyes no longer carried fear, but only love. Their bodies no longer bore scars, but only strength. Jesus looked at me with eyes of fire and compassion. Every wound they suffered, I heal. Every cruelty they endured, I redeem. Every moment of fear is turned into joy. Nothing escapes my mercy. I could no longer contain my tears. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was seeing. Around me, animals pressed close as if to comfort me, their love pouring into my heart. I felt Samuel nuzzle against my arm, and even the memory of Shepherd came alive within me as though he, too, was part of this eternal promise. Jesus knelt beside me, placing his hand upon my shoulder. Jonathan, you must understand. The way humanity treats animals reveals much about their hearts. Those who show compassion are reflecting my image, even when they do not realize it. Those who rescue, who protect, who cherish the least of these creatures are participating in my work of redemption. I looked into his eyes and asked, Lord, does this mean that even those who do not claim to know you, but who show love to animals, are reflecting your heart? His smile was radiant. Love recognizes love. When someone rescues the abandoned, they are walking in my footsteps. When someone shows mercy to the suffering, they are revealing my character. These acts of love matter more than they know, and they will be honored in my kingdom. As he spoke, I saw a vision of people reunited with animals they had rescued on earth. A child embraced a dog she had saved from the streets. A man held a bird he had nursed back to health. Each reunion carried a weight of eternal joy, proving that love given in secret on earth was celebrated openly in heaven. Jesus rose and gestured for me to follow him again. We ascended the hill together, and as we reached the top, the view spread before me like a vision of perfection. Every creature, great and small, filled the landscape with harmony. There were no divisions, no fear, no sorrow, only love. He turned to me once more, his voice gentle but full of authority. Jonathan, this is why I came, to make all things new, to restore what was broken, to heal every wound, to bring every love into eternity. Nothing that reflects my heart will ever be lost. The words pierced my spirit with such force that I could hardly stand. I realized then that this vision was not only for me, it was for every grieving child, every broken-hearted parent, every lonely soul who had lost an animal and feared they would never see them again. It was for the countless people who needed hope, who needed to know that love does not end with death. As the valley filled with the sound of creation worshiping in unity, I understood that Jesus was calling me to carry this message into the world. A message not of loss, but of restoration, not of endings, but of eternal beginnings. And so I stood with Samuel at my side and the presence of countless creatures surrounding me, ready to receive whatever else he wished to show me, for I knew the vision was not finished. There was more to see, more to understand, more to reveal about the boundless heart of God. As we descended from the hill, the horizon seemed to open into a new realm of light. The air was filled with songs I could not fully understand, yet somehow knew. They were melodies of joy rising from creation itself, harmonies that blended voices of animals, rivers, winds, and unseen choirs of heaven. Each note carried truth. Each sound whispered the reality that nothing formed in love is ever forgotten. Jesus walked before me, his robe flowing like living light. Samuel trotted happily at my side, his fur glowing with the peace of eternity. Around us, creatures of every shape and kind moved as if drawn into one great procession of worship. Their unity declared what words could not capture. This was the restoration of all things. We came to a great clearing where the atmosphere felt charged with anticipation. I saw animals waiting, their eyes fixed upon the path. Some were small, some great, some familiar, some beyond imagination. Yet each one radiated the same joy, as if they knew that what was about to unfold would heal hearts beyond counting. Jesus stopped and turned to me. "Jonathan, there is something you must see. It will not only heal the boy who once wept for Samuel, it will heal every person who has carried the grief of losing a beloved companion." As he spoke, I felt the ground beneath me grow steady, as if heaven itself was preparing to reveal a truth too great for earth to contain. Suddenly, the clearing filled with movement. Animals began to run, fly, and leap toward us, their pace quickened with joy, their voices rising in sounds of recognition. My heart froze, then leapt within me, for I knew them. Not only Samuel, but others I had loved in different seasons of my life. My grandmother's cat, Whiskers, bounded toward me, her fur shining with beauty I had never seen before. My uncle's horse, Thunder, galloped forward with strength that shook the ground, yet his eyes were gentle as he bent his head toward me. Even the small turtle I had rescued as a teenager came crawling with surprising swiftness, its shell radiant as if adorned by the hand of God. I fell to my knees as they surrounded me, each one pressed close, their recognition undeniable, their love overwhelming. I buried my face in Samuel's fur again, but now I was also embraced by Whiskers rubbing against my arm, Thunder pressing his head against my shoulder, the turtle resting by my hand. It was as if every chapter of my life was meeting me in this moment. Every bond I thought was broken, restored in one eternal embrace. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered through sobs, "Lord, how is this possible? How can these bonds endure across time, across death, across the veil between earth and eternity?" Jesus knelt beside me, his presence wrapping around us like a shelter. Every tear you cried for them, I caught. Every moment you missed them, I was comforting them here. Love like this does not die because it comes from me, and I am life eternal. His words poured into me like living water. The grief I had carried since childhood was not only healed, it was transformed. It became joy, pure and radiant, joy that filled every part of me until I could hardly breathe. I looked up through my tears and saw that others were experiencing the same reunion. An elderly man laughed as a parrot perched upon his shoulder once more, speaking words he thought he would never hear again. A young girl ran into the embrace of a dog that had once guarded her bedside, both of them crying and rejoicing together. Everywhere I looked, creation was being restored, love was being made eternal, and grief was being undone. Jesus rose to his feet and lifted his hands. "This is why I came, to make all things new, to restore what was broken, to reunite every love that seemed lost forever." The words echoed across the clearing, and all creation responded. Birds lifted their wings in flight, animals leapt in joy, rivers sparkled with light. It was as though heaven itself confirmed his declaration. As the celebration continued, Jesus turned to me once more. "Jonathan, this is not only for you. It is for everyone who has ever loved one of my creatures. It is for every child who cried believing their pet was gone forever. It is for every heart that wondered if love could be stronger than death. This truth must be shared, for it carries healing that the world desperately needs." I nodded, though my heart trembled beneath the weight of his words. To be entrusted with such a message was beyond what I had ever imagined. Yet I knew it was true. The world was full of people carrying wounds that could be healed by this vision of his love. We walked farther into the clearing, and Jesus showed me even more. He pointed to animals who had been mistreated on earth, their bodies once scarred, their spirits once broken. Now they stood radiant, whole, and free. Their eyes no longer reflected fear, but only joy. Their voices no longer cried in pain, but sang in harmony. Every cruelty they had endured had been undone. Every loss had been redeemed. "Do you see, Jonathan," he said, "nothing escapes my mercy. Every injustice is overturned, every wound is healed, every kindness is remembered." I looked again at the animals surrounding me and realized that even the smallest act of love I had ever given was preserved. Every bowl of food, every gentle touch, every whispered prayer over a suffering pet was not forgotten. In his kingdom, even the smallest kindness was woven into eternity. I asked quietly, "Lord, does this mean that the way we treat animals on earth has eternal weight?" His gaze pierced me with both tenderness and truth. "Yes, Jonathan. The way humanity treats animals reveals much about the heart. When my children show compassion to the least of my creatures, they are reflecting my image. When they rescue the abandoned, they are joining in my work of redemption. When they cherish what the world overlooks, they are proving that love has no boundaries. These acts are precious to me, and they will not go unrewarded." His words struck me with both conviction and comfort. I thought of every person who had ever bent down to rescue a stray, every child who had prayed for a sick pet, every family who had wept together over the loss of a beloved animal. Each one had been participating in his eternal plan without fully realizing it. As I stood surrounded by animals I had once lost, their love pressing upon me from every side, I realized that the truth he was revealing was not a small detail of heaven. It was a glimpse into the very heart of God, a heart that does not exclude but includes, a heart that does not diminish love but multiplies it, a heart that holds every creature, every bond, every act of kindness within the embrace of eternity. The clearing glowed with light as if the heavens themselves were affirming this revelation. My tears had turned to laughter, my grief to joy, my questions to answers that surpassed understanding. For I now knew that nothing loved in him is ever lost. Nothing created in love is ever forgotten. Jesus looked at me one last time before we left the clearing. "Jonathan, remember this. The love you have shared with animals in your life is eternal because it comes from me. And what comes from me will never end." With those words, we began to walk again, leaving behind the celebration that filled the clearing. But I knew the vision was not complete. There was still more to see, more to hear, more to carry back into the world. My heart, once heavy with grief, was now bursting with anticipation, for I understood that what awaited me next would not only confirm everything I had seen, but would reveal even deeper truths about the kingdom of God and the redemption of all creation. As we left the clearing of reunions, the landscape shifted once more. The meadow gave way to a place of such radiance that I could not compare it to anything on earth. It was as though creation itself had become a great sanctuary, every color brighter, every sound purer, every breath filled with life. Samuel walked beside me with calm delight, and the others I had loved remained close, as if to remind me that their presence was not a fleeting gift, but a permanent promise. Jesus walked ahead, his steps steady, his eyes glowing with compassion and purpose. I sensed that what he was about to show me would complete the vision. My heart burned with expectation, for I knew that he was not revealing these things for me alone. This was a message meant to travel far beyond this place, a revelation intended to heal wounds across the earth. We entered a vast field that stretched to the horizon. Animals of every kind filled the expanse, yet there was no chaos, no fear, no violence. Each creature moved with harmony, as though every heartbeat was synchronized to the rhythm of heaven. Birds soared above us in graceful patterns, their wings flashing with light. Deer leapt across the grass with joy that seemed endless. Even the great beasts of earth, elephants and tigers, moved with gentleness as though their strength itself had been transformed into peace. Jesus turned to me. "Jonathan, you have seen much, but now I will show you why this truth matters. It is not only to comfort those who mourn, it is to reveal the fullness of my heart." As he spoke, I felt the weight of his love press upon me. It was not a weight that crushed, but one that lifted, as though my spirit was being drawn upward into his own. He pointed toward the multitudes of animals spread across the field. "Every one of these creatures reflects my nature. Every sound they make, Every movement they carry, every bond they form is part of the symphony of creation that glorifies me. Humanity often believes that worship belongs only to them, but creation worships without ceasing. The purr of a cat, the song of a bird, the loyalty of a dog, all are hymns rising to my throne. I listened as the field seemed to respond, a chorus rising from the voices of creation. It was not a sound of words, but of pure worship, each creature praising the one who had made them. I realized then that the universe was never silent. It had always been singing. Only now could I hear it. Jesus continued, "This is why cruelty to creation grieves me so deeply. Every act of harm against these creatures is an attempt to silence their song. But I will not allow my creation to be silenced. I will restore every voice. I will heal every wound. I will redeem every loss." His words pierced me with conviction, and I thought of all the ways humanity had failed in its care for the creatures entrusted to us. Yet, his words were also filled with hope. For every failure, he was promising redemption. For every wound, he was promising healing. For every cruelty, he was promising justice. As we walked farther into the field, I saw another vision. People from every nation were being reunited with animals they had loved on earth. Some had lost pets in childhood, others in old age. Some had rescued creatures from suffering, others had cared for them in quiet devotion. Each one was now embraced by those same animals, their joy uncontainable. Tears flowed freely, laughter filled the air, and love rose like incense. Jesus turned to me and said, "This is what awaits those who have loved my creatures. Their love was not wasted. Their grief was not final. Their hope was not in vain. For every act of compassion is remembered. Every bond of love is eternal. Every life touched by kindness is preserved in me." I could hardly breathe under the beauty of it all. My voice trembled as I asked, "Lord, what do you want me to do with all that I have seen? What do you want me to carry back to the world?" He looked at me with eyes that burned with both tenderness and command. "Share this truth. Tell my people that my love is wider than they have imagined. Tell the grieving that their beloved companions are not lost. Tell the children that the animals they cried for are waiting in joy. Tell the world that nothing created in love is ever wasted." I felt the weight of his calling settle into my heart. It was not a burden of fear, but a privilege of love. To carry this truth was to carry healing, hope, and restoration into places of despair. It was to give back to others the comfort he had given to me. Jesus raised his hand, and the light of heaven surrounded us. "Jonathan, remember this. My kingdom is not small. It is not narrow. It is wide enough to hold all creation. It is strong enough to redeem every loss. It is filled enough to multiply every joy. And one day, all who have loved will see with their own eyes that nothing in me is ever truly lost." His words echoed like thunder made of love. The field erupted in song as creation itself seemed to affirm his declaration. My tears flowed freely, not of sorrow, but of joy, so complete it felt as though my heart would burst. Then, with a gentleness beyond description, Jesus placed his hand upon my shoulder. "It is time for you to return. Carry this message, speak it with love, share it with faithfulness, and know that I am with you always." The vision began to fade, though the peace remained. The meadow dissolved into the quiet night of my own backyard. The stars still shone above me, the crickets still sang, and shepherds still slept peacefully at my side. But everything had changed. The ember that had burned in me since childhood was no longer a question. It was a flame of truth that would never die. I looked at Shepherd and saw him not as a temporary companion, but as an eternal friend. I thought of Samuel, Whiskers, Thunder, the turtle, and every other creature I had loved. I knew now that they were waiting, alive in joy, safe in the heart of God. From that night on, I carried the message Jesus gave me. I shared it with family, with friends, with strangers who were grieving. I watched as hope lit their eyes, as tears of sorrow became tears of comfort. Children who had been told their pets were gone forever smiled with joy when they learned the truth. Adults who had carried silent grief for decades felt their hearts lifted. Everywhere I shared the message, healing followed. Now I share it with you. Know this. The love you have given to animals, the love they have given to you, is eternal. It is not erased by death. It is not forgotten by God. It is preserved in his kingdom. where love never ends. If you have lost a beloved companion, do not despair. They are not gone forever. They are waiting for you in joy, healed, whole, radiant with the love of the one who made them. The tears you cried for them were caught by his hand. The grief you carried is known by his heart, and one day the reunion you long for will come, more beautiful than you can imagine. This is the truth Jesus entrusted to me, a truth I now entrust to you. Carry it, share it, let it heal the child within you who once wept. Let it comfort the friend beside you who now mourns. Let it remind you that the God who created sparrows, lions, horses, and dogs is the same God whose love never ends. For his kingdom is wide, his mercy is infinite, his love is eternal, and in that love, nothing is ever truly lost.